The cross. This is the most identifiable symbol of our Christian faith. Well, so much around us is changing, and while so much around us remains uncertain, the cross remains. And so on this day, Good Friday, we come together at the cross. It's a day when we observe and reflect on the sacrifice that Jesus made for us at the cross. It's a day when we consider how he suffered and died. The story is familiar. We know about the Last Supper when Jesus and his disciples gathered and shared a meal together. We know much of what Jesus told them in that room after the meal. We know Jesus and the disciples went to the Garden of Gethsemane to pray. We have these details. We know what happened when Jesus was arrested in the garden. He was taken to Pontius Pilate, then to Herod, and then back to Pilate. All this is written down for us in detail. All this we can know. We can follow the story watching in detail as Jesus is mocked and then led to be crucified. We can almost hear the jeers of the crowd as they watch this execution. But when it comes to the crucifixion itself, the Bible is silent, noticeably so. And they crucified him. That's pretty much all that any of the biblical writers have to say. Only a handful of words are used to describe this pivotal moment, so vitally important in the Christian faith. And they crucified him. That's all. And they crucified him. Crucifixions were happening long before Jesus walked this earth, and they continued long afterward. Japan used crucifixions in the 15th and 16th centuries. There are records from Burma in the 19th century. There's an account of a Canadian soldier who was crucified during the First World War. There are even a few accounts of crucifixions much more recently, some within the past few years. And yet the term seems almost abstract to us. None of us was there. We didn't see this scene play out. But many were present. The Roman soldiers, the disciples, the people in the crowd, and others. Listen. Listen now as they relate what they saw and how they felt so many years ago.
I was there to pay homage, to pay respects to the prefect Pilate, nothing more. What can I say, or why even confess to say that I was there at all? What did I see with my eyes? What stage did my ears attend? I tell you this, it was not what my mind dreamed possible, nor be it something I dare to remember. But etched on my mind it will be. I will never forget. I am a Roman, and I've seen this sort of thing for as long as I can remember. I've seen the snapping of bone and the piercing of flesh. The smell of blood is all too familiar to me. But this time it was different. I've heard the cries of murderers and thieves. I have come to know the wails of the enemies of Rome. But this time something was different. What influence of the gods be that I find myself there? I am a Roman, at the feet of the one they call the Messiah. I did not know him, nor be it possible, as he was a Jew of Jews. The truth be revealed, I did hear of his teachings. They penetrated every corner of Rome, but none of them fully absorbed to the measure and intent for which they were designed. He seemed common, as any other man. Nothing about him jumped forth with prominence. His broken body and ripped flesh. Still I must ask, is this an enemy of Rome? Was this the enemy of Judea? This man they called Jesus, the Nazarene? For what design or purpose did Rome have its hand involved in this man's perilous sentence? What crime to Rome was offended? I could see into his eyes as the nails touched his hand. I could see that his eyes gazed upon my face with the look that I was in fact known to him. At the strike of the gavel, iron-pierced flesh, his fingers clenched closed in agony, yet they were pried apart for yet another strike. His tears mixed with blood that was loosened to flow once more. The agony in his cries were echoed by a group of followers who mourn and bear witness to this man's end. When they nailed the second hand for crimes upon Rome that again did not bear truth or witness, I found it odd that it holds little reward for actions inflicted upon this man for such hollow crimes. Solace be taken that the accusations themselves did not originate from the heart of Rome. Sour the taste must feel that it was the Judeans themselves that forced the hand of Pontius to this resolution. I could see the man they called the Messiah, and with no scales on my eyes, I could still see no enemy, not for what remained. As Romans, we only perfected crucifixion as a punishment, designed to inflict the maximus of pain and suffering. It's a design to not only simply kill, but in simplicity, it remains about killing in a nightmare of ways. For who was to be crucified, suffering be the intended target. The delivered amount of pain was always to be tested. Crucifixion, a personified, disgraceful form of execution. It's a reservation for slaves, foreigners, revolutionaries, and vile criminals. This man being none of these titles presented. This man being none, yet at the hands of Rome and to the delight of the Sanhedrin, this Messiah, a threat to them both, it was soon to be accomplished.
It wasn't supposed to be like this. And today, I wonder how God could allow this to happen, especially after what he promised earlier. He will be called the Son of the Most High, and the Lord God will give to him the throne of his father David, and he will reign over the house of Jacob forever, and of his kingdom there will be no end. No end? He didn't have enough time to set up his kingdom. In an instant, everything came to a halt. In a moment, his world and our world was over. All we knew is gone now. All our hopes are over. What happens now? Now Jesus is about to be executed as a criminal, as the worst of the worst. There is no throne here, only a cross. There is no kingdom, only this, humiliation, shame. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Years ago, when just before Jesus was born, I could believe in this promise from God. He has scattered the proud in the thoughts of their hearts. He has brought down the mighty from their thrones and exalted those of humble estate. He has filled the hungry with good things, and the rich he has sent away empty. But now his disciples have scattered. The proud have not been brought down. The mighty remain on their thrones. And the promise has not come true. It wasn't supposed to be like this. How could it happen? How could it be that Jesus has been sentenced to die? Was God powerless? Could he do nothing to stop any of this? And if he is truly in control, as we have long been taught, then why did he refuse to act? We'd been given the promise of a king, but all I see before me now is a cross. It wasn't supposed to be like this.
It could have been me. I could have been one of those who put Jesus on the cross that day. It was Rome, and I am her conscript. The task could have been mine. I was not assigned that day. I was not at the cross. But if the day had gone differently, Rome might have had me there, That morning, I was in service elsewhere. And so other hands put Jesus on the cross. Other hands crucified him. Other hands, but all hands of Rome, just like mine. Never have I asked whether it was right to put a condemned man to death. Never before. I would do my duty faithfully, immediately, and that was all. It has never been a question of whether it was right. In fact, asking such a question is an insult to Rome. The orders came from ranks above, and the empire is never wrong. But this day was different from all others. The question on my mind now is a question I dare not even allow myself to think. What happened? Why was this Yeshua Messiah, this Jesus of Nazareth, sentenced to death? I have no answer. Perhaps others might understand, but I do not. Last night, I watched as Pontius Pilate sentenced Jesus to death. Pilate said he did not want to have this man crucified. And then he took a bowl of water and washed his hands. It was as if to say, my hands are clean. Hands of Rome, just like mine. I watched as some in the crowd raised their fists and they shouted, "Crucify him!" Hands like mine. And now I ask, who is to blame? Whose hands put Jesus on the cross? Was it the soldiers, my friends, the men with whom I have served for so long? They held the hammers and the nails. They did the deeds. And later, as he was dying, they gambled for his clothing. Their hands are hands like mine. Or was it Pilate who gave the order? He did not touch the nails. He did not put Jesus on the cross. And he washed his hands. What does he think now? What does he see when he looks at his hands? Does he see hands like mine? Or was it the people in that crowd? Was it them? They demanded the crucifixion. And had Pilate not met their demands, it could have resulted in a rebellion. They shouted, "Crucify him," and they raised their hands, hands like mine. I was at the cross later that day, later, after the deed was done. And I remember watching my centurion standing there solemnly. He never speaks, but at times like this, except to give orders we were to follow. But on this day, he spoke. This was a righteous man. I heard his voice clearly. Make no mistake. Surely this was the Son of God. It is over now, but I still cannot help but look at these hands. No, these hands did not put Jesus on the cross, but a subject of Rome did. If one calls himself a true Roman, these hands of mine were theirs. And if the day had turned out differently, the blood would have surely stained my skin, my hands.
It's over now. Jesus has died. But for me, and for the others who knew him, life goes on. If we could just have one more day of instruction, one more day at his feet. Everything just feels a little bit empty, and I hope that as time goes by, it will be easier to cope. but I don't think it's going to be easy in any way. Jesus has died, and I do not understand how such a thing could have happened. He was known by so many people and loved by so many people. He wouldn't have hurt anyone. He was so kind and gentle. He worked and practiced his faith. And now I am devastated, empty. I admire him now more than ever. I wish I could die like him. Really, he was so kind. Am I angry? No, not really, just numb. I do not have the energy to feel angry. And besides, anger was not what he taught. So many times he spoke of forgiveness. There was a time when one of the disciples asked Jesus, "Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother or sister who sins against me? Up to 7 times?" 7 times is generous. 7 times is a lot more than our law requires. But Jesus just shook his head, as if to say that they didn't understand what he had taught. And then he said, "I tell you, not 7 times, but 77 times." The question of whether he meant 77 times in a year or in a lifetime would have been pointless. That was not what Jesus meant. The disciples and all of us were supposed to forgive, not just once or twice, but all the time. We were to forgive without keeping track of what had been done. We were to forgive. Love keeps no record of wrongs. It's a lesson I continue to learn every day, more so now than ever before. Jesus taught us to forgive, especially when it's not easy to do. It's the right thing to do, and it is something he wanted us to learn. On the cross he prayed, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." If he could forgive in that moment, from that place, after all that was done to him, how could I not follow his example and forgive others for what they do to me? And so, to those who have put Jesus on the cross, I would tell them this: you have taken my son, but I don't have any grudge against you. I have forgiven you, and I am praying for you that God will guide you.